Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to dominate competitive console Fortnite. After roughly a 1 to 1.5 month break between seasons 2 and 3, competitive console Fortnite is right back in the swing of things. There are weekly solo platform cash cups every Thursday for the next 5 weeks or so, daily platform trio cups every day for the next week, and there's also a possibility that this season's solo FNCS ends up being platform specific as well. Now, I personally believe that even if you aren't a huge competitive player, if you're on console, these platform competitive events are such great practice. And since they're kinda rare, you want to take advantage of them as much as possible. To help you do that, I'm going to be sharing a few tips that I picked up by watching some of the top competitive console players as they've played these events over the last few days. And I'm going to make sure that the tips apply to all competitive game modes pretty much equally, so it doesn't matter if you're playing a trio daily cup or solo cash cup, the information in this video will still help you. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is something that I think is a really interesting and secret tip for the end game on console. So as I was watching a few different top console players play all these cups, I noticed a sort of trend when it came to how they played endgame. It seemed like a lot of the time, these players would rotate early really frequently. And that's kind of weird because in these 20 to 30 player moving zones at the end of matches, your best bet usually is to rotate at the last possible second as the zone starts moving. The general reason why is because if you rotate late, the storm will be at your back, which means you don't have to worry about anyone shooting from behind you. And also, since most people rotate late, it's less likely that you'll get focused by a large portion of the lobby since there's just so much going on. So I found it weird that I saw so much early rotating by these console players, and I really tried to think about why that would be so beneficial, and after a little bit of thought, here's my theory that I think makes a lot of sense. As I'm sure you all know, console endgames and competitive are notorious for having super low FPS and a ton of lag. Even if there's only 20 people left, which is the case in a lot of cash cups since they're more kill based, as if it wasn't hard enough already to play on 60 FPS, during moving zones a lot of the time you'll be getting 20 to 40. It basically makes it look like the entire game is happening in slow motion, and that causes even expert builders and editors to mess up simple tunnels or escape edits. Now, what causes these massive FPS drops and lag is the fact that a lot of actions are happening at the same time in a very small area. Your PS4 or Xbox can't handle 20 plus people all doing some sort of building, editing, or shooting at the same time when the zone starts moving. However, if you rotate early when most people are just sitting in there one by one and they're not really doing anything while they wait 20 to 30 seconds for the zone to start moving, your rotation will likely be a lot easier because there'll be less of an FPS drop and lag. Now, that's just the first positive. Here's the one that I think is even more important. If you can successfully rotate early, you now get to post up in the safe zone, probably edit a window in your 1x1, and now you can fry the kids who are trying to rotate in while they're getting an ungodly terrible amount of FPS and skipping all over the place. I don't know whether they intentionally did it or not, but I saw this play out so many times when I was watching those top players. They would set up exactly like I just described, and they'd end up getting so many kills on players that were trying to rotate, but it looked like they had never played Fortnite before. And obviously that isn't the case because they were in top elo competitive lobbies, it's just that they're trying to tunnel in or box up on 20 FPS, which makes it about 5 times harder. So obviously you aren't going to be able to rotate early every time, and this strategy does lose some of its effectiveness if it isn't a 20 plus player endgame, but I think because of the reasons I just discussed, rotating early on console is so much more effective than it is on PC. The next thing that I want to discuss is the charge versus attack on console, and more specifically in competitive. So ever since Season 3 dropped, people have really struggled when it comes to choosing between these two shotguns. The Charge obviously has the advantage of dealing a lot more burst damage and having a lot more range, but the attack fires a lot faster, has a larger clip size, and it doesn't have the weird charge mechanic that a lot of people strongly dislike. So one of the things I was paying close attention to as I watched the top console players play was which shotgun they preferred to use. Now in total, I watched about 8 different players consistently enough to where I'd be able to tell which shotty they like to use more, and although it was fairly close to even, which was pretty much what I was expecting, it did seem like slightly more players would use TACs. The exact split was 5-3, so definitely not the biggest sample size in the world, but I do think it's enough to where you can draw some kind of conclusion. I showcased in a previous video that the aim assist on the charge is borderline non-existent on console and just controller in general, so I think that probably played a factor in which shotty these players choose to use in competitive. However, I can't say how much rarity affects their decision. I think even the biggest TAC fans would take a gold charge over a white TAC and vice versa for a gold TAC over a white charge. Those rarity decisions obviously vary on a player-by-player basis, so honestly, it really isn't even worth speculating about. The next thing I want to talk about is how for mid-game fights, getting height on console seems to be king. If you're playing a cash cup that heavily rewards kills, it's going to be really hard to place well without taking at least some mid-game fights. And even if you try your hardest to ignore them and solely focus on placement, there are going to be situations where they're pretty much unavoidable because someone's going to push you and now you're going to need to defend yourself. So one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was watching these top players play is how it seemed like almost all of them wanted to turn their mid-game fights into battles for high ground. In top-level PC competitive play, you honestly don't really see that happening very frequently. The vast majority of mid-game fights end up being very close to the ground with lots of editing and trading left-hand peek shotgun shots. But on console, that playstyle is simply less viable in general and also a lot riskier. On PC, there really isn't that much of a difference between being on the offensive end and the defensive end of a box fight, and that's a main reason why top players can win those fights so consistently. But on console, if you're boxed up, most players won't even think twice about jumping into your box with an SMG and barrel stuffing you, because that's such a simple and effective strategy, and it's really hard to consistently outplay that with the limitations of 60 FPS. So I think the main reason why a lot of the top console players opt to go for high ground so frequently is because it creates enough distance to where they can't get barrel stuff, and most of the time it'll force the enemy to box up, which, as we just discussed, gives you a huge advantage in that box fight if you choose to push them. The next thing I want to talk about regarding console competitive is the power of floppers. This probably isn't a super unpopular opinion overall, but I personally believe that floppers are one of the 2 or 3 most overpowered weapons/items in the entire game for competitive, and I also think they're even slightly more powerful on console than they are on PC. The most well-known and sort of notorious use for floppers is obviously during endgame. If you have a max stack of them, you can chill in even a max damage zone for an extra 30 seconds or so. That allows you to pick up easy kills because enemies are never expecting to be shot from the storm, and it's also great for placement because it makes you incredibly unlikely to die while everybody else is rotating and fighting. And towards the beginning of the video, I talked about how hard it can be to late rotate on console with the terrible FPS and lag, so floppers are such a great fallback option for when that goes wrong. Let's say you mess up your tunnel and now you're getting sprayed at by an AR, you can take a few steps back into zone, chill out for a few seconds while munching on some floppers, and then you can rotate in from a slightly different angle. On top of that, floppers are also incredibly strong for mid-game fights as well. I also talked about how aggressive console players notoriously are, so it can be really hard in a lot of mid-game fights to get off any kind of healing item other than minis. So being able to gain 50 white health in literally less than a second with a flopper is absolutely game-changing. And to be honest, I really don't understand why floppers aren't an item that has like a 50+% carry rate in competitive. Sure, a lot of people use them and call them overpowered, but I've thought that way more people should. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down the comment section below. Let me know whether or not you've played competitive console Fortnite before, and if so, what was your best placement / achievement in any event? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.